Have you noticed that you can be genuinely happy with your life right up until the moment you open up one particular app or run into one particular person, and then in about 4 seconds, it's all quietly ruined? And have you noticed that it makes no sense? I mean, nothing about your actual life changed in those 4 seconds. Same house, same work, the same people who love you. All that changed is that you saw someone else's and yours suddenly felt smaller. Here's what I want you to sit with today. You've almost certainly been told to stop comparing yourself to other people, like it's a bad habit that you could just quit if you had a little more discipline. I want to make the opposite case. You can't stop. It's not a character flaw and it's not a weakness. It's built in how human beings figure out where they stand. So the real question isn't how to stop. It's what to do with the comparison once it shows up, because that sting that you feel is actually trying to tell you something. And most of us have never learned how to read it. So today, I'll show you where the reflex comes from, why it hurts so much more than it used to, and a way to turn a moment of comparison from something that quietly wrecks your afternoon into some of the most honest information you'll get about your own life. So, comparison, the thing you promised yourself you'd stop doing sometimes around the age 14 and are somehow still doing it at 40. I want to be useful here, not just reassuring. It's easy to say, don't compare yourself. Your journey is your own. And it sounds nice for about a day. What I'd rather do is take this reflex seriously, understand why it's so strong, why modern life has cranked it up to a volume that no human was built to handle, and then give you something that you can actually use the next time it hits. Not a way to never feel it again, a way to make it mean something. So let's start with why you're wired for this in the first place. Here's the first thing that I want to take off your shoulders. Comparing yourself to other people is not evidence that something's wrong with you. It's evidence that you're a person. Back in 1954, a psychologist named Leon Festinger published a paper called The Theory of Social Comparison Processes. And his core idea was almost embarrassingly simple. When there's no objective ruler for something, no clear external measure of how you're doing, then you reach for the nearest available ruler, which is other people. How am I doing? Well, compared to who? Think about what actually has an objective ruler in your life: your height, maybe your bank balance to the dollar. But the things that keep you up at night, whether you're a good parent, whether your career adds up to anything, whether you're living a life that matters, there's no gauge on the dashboard for any of that. So your mind does the only thing it knows how to do: it looks around. So comparison isn't a bug, and that's the important point. It's the measuring instrument that your mind reaches for when there's no other ruler. And that's why it's strongest exactly on the things that matter the most and can't be measured directly. You know, nobody agonizes over comparing their shoe size. People agonize over comparing their marriages, their careers, how their kids turned out, the stuff that has no scoreboard. I remember when I was one of the first people that I ever knew to work from home, way, way, way before COVID. And, I had my own business and I was feeling really good and I was doing reasonably well. And I remember being at one of my son's soccer practices and I was talking to some of the other dads and I'm thinking to myself, hey, I'm doing pretty good. You know what I mean? I'm working from home. I get an opportunity to be here and come to all of these practices. I'm making good money. And then I start talking to them and I start realizing what their careers were. I had these perceptions that I was in this really unique situation. All of a sudden, I found out that they're all doing these really high power things. And I remember at that moment feeling like, oof, did I even make the right decision? Should I have just gotten a job and done a traditional career? Because that's what these guys had done and they were all killing it. So I was feeling really good until I got to know, and then all of a sudden, I wasn't feeling as good anymore. And so you're not broken for doing this. You're running standard human software. We all do it. So the question that I have for you is, what's the area of your life where you compare the most? And notice that it's probably one that you care about deeply, but you can't easily measure. So if it's this normal, this built in, then why does it feel so much worse than it used to? Well, here's what's changed. For almost all of human history, the people that you compared yourself to were the people you actually knew. A few dozen, maybe a couple hundred, your neighbors, your extended family, the people in your village or your trade. And crucially, you saw their whole lives, the good mornings and the bad ones, the arguments, the ordinary Tuesdays. That's all gone. Now the comparison set isn't a few hundred people that you know in full, it's thousands of people you don't know at all, and you're not seeing their lives. You're seeing their highlight reels, the launch, not the 18 months of doubt before it, the vacation, not the credit card statement after it. You're comparing your entire life, including all the parts nobody else can see, against the single best moment other people choose to publish. It's not a fair fight. It was never designed to be. So this reflex is ancient in us, but the environment that it's running in is brand new and it's quietly rigged. That's why it's the same instrument, but there are wildly distorted inputs and it makes us feel particularly bad. So, that curated feed, everyone's a highlight reel, including yours to them, you know, is a pretty natural phenomenon. I used to tell my kids all the time, when you go to college, quite literally, there's a party going on all the time. You have to pick and choose. If all you do is live vicariously through what other people are doing and see, oh, look at how much fun everybody else is having while you're studying, then you start to feel like, geez, I'm missing out. But you didn't see all the times that they weren't at the party. It's a different group of people all the time because you have to take care of your responsibilities. So the person that you're envying may be envying someone else in the same 10 minutes that you are. And when we think about money and financial well-being, it translates there too, right? Because a lot of what looks like effortless success online is actually invisible debt. It's invisible help or invisible unhappiness. Sometimes people come from a lot. So it looks like they've achieved a lot when in reality they just inherited or were given it to them. Or they're racking up massive debt to create this lifestyle and this perception that looks really good on paper and yet in reality is not. Because you can't see the price tag on somebody else's life. So the game is rigged. It's not that I'm losing, is 100% true. At the same time, we don't want to downplay it completely either or say that it doesn't matter because it does. The question is, and the important point is, whose life are you actually comparing yours to and how much of theirs have you actually seen? And there's real research now on what that rigged comparison does to us. Now, I want to be careful here because this is an area where it's easy to overclaim. In 2014, a team of researchers led by Aaron Vogel published a study called Social Comparison, Social Media, and Self-Esteem. They found that people who use Facebook more often tended to have lower self-esteem, and that the link ran specifically through upward social comparison, meaning that the more that you're exposed to people who seem to be doing better than you, the more it costs. Now, here's the honest caveat. That's a correlation in one part of the picture. Comparison and how we feel run in both directions, and no single study settles it. But the broad finding lines up with a lot of what we already know. A steady diet of upward comparison with no context and no off switch tends to wear people down. Here's the more interesting part, though. Researchers have found that comparing yourself to someone doing better than you doesn't automatically hurt. It can actually be inspiring, but only under one condition. And this is where things become really important because context plays a huge part in this. So if we are looking up, we are trying to reach another level and seeing things ahead of us. We could see that from a perspective of assimilation, where we see someone is ahead of us and we think, that's possible. That could be me. This makes it real. Here's the path. And that pulls you forward. Or we could see it as contrast. You see someone ahead of you and think, that just proves how far behind I am. It pushes you down and makes you feel like crap. It's the same exact person. It's the same achievement. It's two completely opposite effects. So the difference isn't out there. It's in how you're holding it. Two people can scroll past the same friend's promotion. One thinks, good, that's proof this is doable. Look, he or she did it. That means I can do it too. The other spends the night feeling like a failure because they haven't reached that yet. It's the same input, literally exactly the same. The film Amadeus is basically a 2-hour study in contrast comparison, just like we're talking about. Salieri, a genuinely good composer, is destroyed not by failure, but by his proximity to genius, right? Using Mozart as an inspiration, would have been really powerful. But instead, it's an indictment for him. So the point of the matter is, it's super important that, the sting here is not fixed, it has a dial. And the comparison itself is not good or bad. It depends on our relationship with it. So think of the last time a comparison stung, and then think about, were you assimilating or were you contrasting? And that brings me to the thing that I actually want you to walk away with. The standard advice is stop comparing yourself to others. And I want to say clearly, I think that advice is not just useless, it's a little bit harmful. It's useless because you can't. We just spent 10 minutes on why the reflex is built in. Telling someone to stop comparing is like telling someone to stop feeling hungry. You can override it for a while through sheer will, but it's coming back. And now you also feel like a failure for not being able to switch off a basic human function. But here's the part that actually matters. Even if you could stop, you wouldn't want to, because you'd be throwing away real information. Envy, that hot little flash of, why them and not me? That's not a moral failing that you should be ashamed of. It's a signal. It's one of the most honest signals that you have, because it slips past all of your polite, rehearsed answers about what you're supposed to want and points straight at something that you actually want and don't have. The problem was never that you feel it. The problem is that nobody taught you how to read it. So this is an assumption that we need to challenge head on. And it's that comparison is a habit to eliminate. It's not. We want to reframe it. It's an instrument to calibrate instead. So we don't want to kill the signal. We want to read the signal. If we have envy, maybe of a friend who travels constantly, maybe that's pointing at a real hunger for freedom or adventure. Or maybe it's just a borrowed idea of what a successful life looks like on a feed. You don't know which until you actually start to look. So dignity here, right? Your envy isn't ugly. It's data that you've been trained to be ashamed of instead of curious about. And so how do we actually read it? I want to talk about the part that you can actually use. So here's the framework. I'm going to give you 3 questions. It's not a 5-step morning routine. It's not a system. It's 3 questions to ask in the moment of comparison that hits you before the feeling is time to curdle into a bad afternoon. You won't need a journal. You'll just need about 90 seconds of honesty. So question 1, whose scoreboard is this? When the comparison stings, ask, what am I actually measuring right now? And did I ever choose that measure? Sometimes you'll find that you're grading yourself on a scoreboard that you never signed up for. Someone else's definition of success or money or status that you absorbed without ever deciding it was yours. Naming the scoreboard is half the work. A lot of comparison pain is just you losing a game you never meant to play. Question 2, what is the sting pointing at? Look underneath the envy. Is it pointing at a genuine unlived value of yours, something you actually care about and have been neglecting? Or is it pointing at a borrowed metric, something that only looks like it matters because everyone around you seems to want it? Real value or borrowed metric? That's the whole question. And you usually know the answer faster than you'd like to admit. Question 3, what's the smallest honest move? If it's a real value, the envy is telling the truth, then the move is to take one small step toward it this week. Don't overhaul your life, one honest step in the direction the signal is pointing. But if it's a borrowed metric, if you look and you realize you don't actually even want the thing, you just don't want to feel behind on it, then the move is different. The move is to put it down, to consciously stop keeping score on that one. Whose scoreboard? What's it pointing at? What's the smallest honest move? That's it. You can run it standing in your kitchen. So if we think about maybe the envy of a peer's career move, we have a friend, we have a colleague, they made a career move and they're making more money, they have a better title, better working hours, better work-life balance, whatever it is. We want to ask ourselves, am I measuring myself on prestige? And if I am, did I choose prestige or did I inherit it? And then we want to start honestly thinking about it. I mean, do I actually want more responsibility and impact? Or do I just not want to look behind because I'm the one who didn't get the promotion or I'm the one who didn't achieve that same level? If it's real and we do actually want that, then we want to have one conversation this week. We want to have one application that we send out to get toward what we want, or we want to develop one skill this month. If it's borrowed, we want to have the relief of officially quitting that race, consciously raising our hand, we're done with this. It doesn't matter to us for real. And if we look at this in contrast to a different kind of example, maybe envy of someone's marriage or someone's, physical health, right? They're in great shape. And oh, geez, it would be great to be in that kind of shape. It's the same three questions, right? We want to think about whether or not it's a borrowed metric. That's not a cop out, realizing that, hey, I'd love to be fit, but I just don't care that much about it. I'm not going to put in the time. It would be nice to have in a perfect world where I didn't need to do anything, but I'm not willing to do what I need and I don't care that much about it. Then that becomes freeing because now you don't need to worry about that anymore. So it's about competence and calm, right? Because this is something that you can do, not just understand. So pick the comparison that's been nagging you lately and run it through right now while I talk. Now, before you go run this on everything, I owe you a few honest cautions. 3 quick honesties so you don't misuse this. First, this is not a trick for making envy disappear. You'll still feel the flash. The goal is never to feel it, never feel it. The goal is to stop letting an unexamined flash run your mood and sometimes your decisions. Feel it, read it, and then move on. Second, put down the borrowed metric is not the same as pretending you don't care about anything. This isn't about becoming so detached that nothing moves you. It's the opposite. It's about caring precisely, pouring your finite attention into the few measures that are actually yours instead of leaking it across 100 that aren't. And third, sometimes the honest answer to this is this a real value? Is a genuinely uncomfortable yes. Sometimes the comparison is pointing at something true that you've been avoiding, and the smallest honest move is going to ask something real of you. That's not the framework failing. That's the framework working. So you might be thinking, okay, Brett, but this sounds like a lot of introspection for a feeling that lasts a second. I understand that, but it gets fast. The first few times you do it, it needs to be deliberate, and it's going to be a little bit more challenging. After that, it becomes a reflex that runs in the background, and a better reflex than the one that you have now, so it's worth doing the work to replace it. And if we think about career comparison, this is a lot about people chasing a scoreboard, a title, a salary, a prestige that they never actually chose. Their family, their friends, social pressure, whatever, are things that force them into that situation. And the 3 questions are a fast way to find out whether your ambition is really yours or whether it's inherited. So this isn't a comfort blanket. It's a clearer way to see. And that's really what this whole show is about. So let me bring this home. Here's your one practice for the week, and it costs you 90 seconds. The next time, and there will be a next time, probably today, that you feel that specific sting of someone else's life making yours feel smaller, don't scroll past it and don't wallow in it. Stop and run the 3 questions. Whose scoreboard is this? What is the sting pointing at? Real value or borrowed metric? And what's the smallest honest move? One step toward it or the quiet decision to put it down? That's the whole practice. You're not trying to feel less. You're trying to understand more. So this isn't a homework. It's not a journal. It's not an app. It's a 90-second conversation with yourself that you can have in line at the coffee shop. Now, some people might want to actually write it down, especially recurring things, and some want to just do it in your head. Both are absolutely fine. Make it yours, whatever works for you the best. So here's one question I want to leave you with as we close this episode out. What if the thing that you've been envying most is the thing that you'd be most relieved to stop chasing? Let's go back to where we started. That 4-second collapse, happy with your life, then one glance at someone else's and suddenly yours feels smaller. Nothing changed but the ruler you picked up. I don't think the answer is to stop comparing. I think that's a promise you'll break by Tuesday and then feel bad on top of everything else. I think the answer is to get honest about the rulers, because comparison isn't the thief of joy. There's an old line to that effect, usually pinned on Teddy Roosevelt, though honestly nobody can prove he ever said it. And I'd tweak it anyway. Comparison isn't the thief. Unexamined comparison is the kind that you never stop to read. So here's the one thing I want you to carry out of this. The next time that you feel the sting, don't ask, what's wrong with me for feeling this? Ask, what is this trying to tell me? Because underneath almost every comparison is a question about what you actually value. And you're allowed to answer that question for yourself. Whose scoreboard are you playing on? That might be the most important thing you decide all year.